Hi everybody, Dakota Castro here. Today we're going to be going over my green screen editing workflow. Throughout the years I've had to set up and edit my own green screen footage. So I've been able to learn, unfortunately, through a lot of the mistakes. There's a few tricks in here in this tutorial that it took me about a year to learn. So knowing those now, I'm going to pass those off onto you guys. And if you guys like, I do a video on how to set up your own green screen in order to make it easier on yourself in the editing process. So let's get started. Trim off that part. This is the only part I'm going to key out right here. And we can actually do a garbage mask from here too. So this is a very important part of the process because you don't want to be adjusting for things in the background that you don't have to be adjusting for. If you can just mask out those parts, you shouldn't be changing your values in Keylight. Double check. And this is super important that we spend a little bit of extra time in this part just so that we don't cut off anything unnecessarily and we don't leave any parts of the background unnecessarily. So I think that's pretty good. So from there we can replace with After Effects composition, keep it linked to Premiere Pro, and after we're done adding all the effects and everything and we pull our key and we're rendering it, we can come back into Premiere Pro and we can do some color correction. Let's go down to Image Utilities, Keylight, Key Cleaner, and Advanced Spill Suppressor. All right, so Keylight. We're gonna keep it on Intermediate Result. Let's get a selection here. What I like to do is go to RGB and then toggle the alpha setting. So from there we can make some adjustments. Before we make any adjustments, actually, let's double check to make sure that it was the best selection. You see how just clicking around a little bit got rid of so much of the background that we didn't even need to mess with any of the settings here. So the selection is super important. So with screen gain here, this is going to increase the saturation of the background pixels before keying. So it's going to increase the disparity between black and white here. And screen balance kind of does, it tells Keylight what color the background is. And so for green screens, it's usually about 50%. I'm going to lower it in this case. But the blue screens, if you're filming with a blue screen, it can be up to like 95%. I think that's what the range is for blue screens. And leave the despill bias and the alpha bias alone. I don't usually mess with those. Some effects that I don't really mess with, one of them being screen pre-blur. It adds the blur before the key is pulled. So if you see here, I'm going to change it to RGB. New white layer. So if I increase the pre-blur, I don't like the results that we're getting from it. You know, so in some cases, if you're having noisy footage, you might have to resort to using it. But in most cases, I prefer to use screen softness. In this case, I'm going to boost it up just a little bit. We can zoom in here and see what it's doing. See how there's a little bit of noise in here? I mean, we're zoomed in quite a ways, but if I let this play through, quite a bit of noise. I'm going to add the screen softness just to soften it a bit. Still the noise, but it's just a bit more realistic, I feel. So let's go back to alpha, take off the white screen setting. Let's mess with the clip black and clip white values. We're going to definitely need to clip the white because the subject has black. You know, you don't want any of that. That signals transparency. So bring that up to 73. Let's see if there's any background around the edges. We got a pretty good selection. So I'm going to boost it up just a few, just in case I'm not seeing anything. But yeah, this is a pretty good key so far. We have the screen softness at 0.6. I don't do screen despot black or white. Those are in instances where you have a gap of hair or something like that and you need to close that gap. You can use it. Maybe locally you can use it, but if you apply it to the whole key, then what happens is you get that You know, you get it around the arms specifically, and you get it in between the ears. So I like to keep that at 0. You can click these on. Doesn't do too much from what I've found. So from there, just go to Key Cleaner. And this is where a majority of the detail is in. Let's go to Alpha. You see how that adds so much detail to the hair? That's before, after. Now I have it on Reduced Chatter too, so that we don't see as much noisiness. And you're going to want to play it through a few times just to make sure. See, I like that. And the additional edge radius might be a bit high. I don't need it that high. Now the problem with Key Cleaner is that, I'm not sure if we can see it on the alpha setting, but is that it adds some transparency around the edges. You see here, if I boost it up a lot, this, you won't see it necessarily in After Effects, but you'll see it once you render the key and once your video is rendered. You're going to see that there's quite a bit of transparency around the edges, and it's a lot of pain having to re-render keys. So I would suggest keeping that at a low value, and I'm going to give you guys a tool to use so that you can apply Key Cleaner only to the hair section and not to the body, so that you can avoid that side effect of using it. But we're going to do that after we use the Advanced Spill Suppressor. And for this, I usually like to keep it on standard for the most part. I think it does a really good job. You see, that's the after, before, especially on the cheeks, does a good job. But if you have somebody with blonde hair, a lot of times I'll use Ultra, and I'll fine-tune a little bit more. You know, because with the blonde hair, if you just attack it with standard, a lot of times it turns out red. The highlights in the face can get messed with a little bit too. And we're going to apply one more effect actually before I do the holdout masks. And this is Refine Soft Matte. I use it pretty much just for this one checkbox right here, Decontaminate Edge Colors. You see, this is, see if we can get super up close there. For the viewers, this is after, before, especially around the ears. Before, after, before, after. Let's actually boost Key Cleaner up a bit now that we're playing it back, because we were getting some grays in there, some like gray blobbiness in the hair area. But this looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply another garbage mask directly around the hair. Let's get it as close to the hair as possible. So from there, we're going to go down to Effects. Going to go to Key Cleaner, Compositing Options, Add 1 for Mask 2. And you see how it shows up here on blue dot. If you double click the blue dot, it'll come down to that option in the timeline. So if we can Control Shift H to hide all the masks, we can see that that's kind of a harsh transition. So we're going to go here and feather the mask quite a bit. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. I'm seeing that the outline's a little dark, so I'm going to see if I can adjust for that and do screen shrink instead. Cool. So I'm thinking that's looking pretty good. Let's check the alpha transparency before we export it. Nothing's looking too wonky. There's no halo around the edges here because we did the holdout mask for Key Cleaner right here. So now I'm going to make sure to change it off of alpha transparency. No white background. Control S for save, Control M for export, and then we're going to queue it up in Adobe Media Encoder. And while we're waiting, we can see that it's linked up here in Premiere Pro. So I have it set, I believe, to render transparently automatically, but let's say it was on H.264. How would I get to the transparent setting? Well, I do QuickTime, Apple ProRes. I think GoPro Cineform RGB 12-bit with alpha at maximum bit depth. I think that's the setting that I have it on right now. So the video codec's the important part. The GoPro Cineform or animation codec, anything that has an alpha, you see it right here, the alpha setting, you're going to want to hit that dot, and that's going to have the transparent information in it. Just wanted to thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know in the comments section what you're thinking, what your results are, and I will see you on the next video.